Acts 14. Preaching in Iconium, Lystra, and Derbe. Paul and Barnabas spoke to the synagogue in Iconium, and a great multitude of Jews and Greeks believed. But the disobedient Jews stirred up the Gentiles against them. They stayed a long time, speaking boldly in the Lord, who bore witness to the word through miracles. But the city was divided, part held with the Jews and part with the apostles. When their enemies decided to stone them, they fled to the cities of Lystra and Derbe and the region round about, and there they preached the gospel. At Lystra, Paul healed a man who never had walked. When the multitude saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voice and said, "The gods are come down to us in the likeness of men." And they called Barnabas Jupiter, and Paul Mercury, because he was the chief speaker. The priest of Jupiter brought oxen and garlands to the gates, and would have done sacrifice to Paul and Barnabas with the multitudes. When Barnabas and Paul heard of it, they rent their garments and cried out, saying, "Sirs, don't do these things! We're men like you. We bring the gospel to you that you should turn from these vain things to a living God, who made the heaven and the earth, and the sea and all that is in them. In past generations, God allowed all the nations to walk in their own ways, yet he gave witness to his existence, in that he gave you rains and fruitful seasons. Even then, they barely stopped the multitudes from sacrificing to them. But the Jews from Antioch and Iconium came and turned the multitudes against them, so that they stoned Paul and dragged him out of the city, supposing he was dead. But as the disciples stood around him, he rose up and entered the city. The next day he went with Barnabas to Derbe. And when they had preached the gospel to that city, and made many disciples, they returned to Lystra, and to Iconium, and to Antioch, urging the disciples to continue in their faith. And when they had appointed elders in every church, and had prayed with fasting, they commended them to the Lord, on whom they had believed. After preaching in Perga, they sailed home, having completed the work they were sent out to do. Gathering the church together at Antioch, they told what God had done, and how he had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. They stayed with the disciples in Antioch a long time.